Welcome to another tasting video where we're tasting the subscription coffees that we're sending out to all our coffee subscribers every first Wednesday of the month. If you don't know, I'm Tim Wendelbo and I'm the one who actually chooses the coffees that we send out, and we like to make these videos for all our subscribers to be able to enjoy the coffees and also get a little bit of history behind the coffees and also maybe taste the coffees with me. So today we're talking about the coffees we're sending out on the first Wednesday of March. And I'm quite excited about these coffees because I know a lot of our followers that have been following us for many years. They love these coffees. And if you're a new subscriber or this is the first time you're receiving the coffees from us, these coffees are just one of the producers that we're buying from. And we try to send out different coffees every month based on what I feel tastes the best at any given moment. So, for instance, it could be a coffee from Kenya, it could be a coffee from Ethiopia, and so on. Now let's get to it, because we have three coffees that are, to many people, quite similar, but they are quite different as well. And they're all three from the farm Nacimiento in Honduras, in the north of Honduras, in a mountain called Santa Barbara. El Cielito is a little branch of the mountain. And on top of that mountain, there's a little small farm called Nacimiento. Now, this is actually the first farm we started buying from directly. I think the first time we bought it was 2008 through the Cup of Excellence auction. And then later on, we went to the farm to visit Jobneel, and we started buying coffee from him direct. And the journey we have kind of gone through together is quite long. And back then, you know, he had a small little wood house on top of the farm where he would stay. He had a very, very small wet mill where he would process the coffee. In fact, the tank for the mill was just a small cement tank, and he would hand crank the pulping machine and so on. So he didn't really have any infrastructure on the farm, and he had just recently taken over the farm when I started visiting him. So together with his father, Extraberto, they produce quite a lot of coffee now. I think they have 16 hectares in this area. And they also bought, or Jobneel bought, a small piece of land in another area, but that farm will start producing this year. So we are not able to taste those coffees quite yet. Let's begin with the first coffee, because I can talk while we're tasting, I guess. And the first coffee is a Pacas variety, or we call cultivar, cultivated variety. That's the correct term to use. Pacas is actually a dwarf mutation of Bourbon. And why I'm telling you this is because Bourbon is, by many, including myself, kind of one of our favorite cultivars. It can taste really, really nice and fruity if it's grown in high altitudes, but it can also taste quite boring if it's grown in low altitudes. But the Pacas is a mutation, so that means a farmer in El Salvador, actually, the Pacas family, they planted a lot of seeds from their Bourbon trees. And they discovered a tree that was compact, low, high producing, and planted the seeds of that, and the children of that tree were the same. So that means it's a stable cultivar and a mutant of that original Bourbon tree. Now, when I started buying coffee from Nacimiento, he actually had three different cultivars. He had Bourbon, he had Catuai, and he had Pacas. And he used to bulk everything together, so that means at the end of his harvest season, he would give me one sample of his entire harvest, and that's what I could taste. And it was almost like take it or leave it. And then, because of the Cup of Excellence system, and also because we asked for it, he started separating each and every cultivar and each and every single picking that he did. And that means today we're receiving between 30 and 40 samples from him, just from the same harvest, but because it's separated by harvest date and by cultivar. And then we cut through these coffees, and then we put some of them together based on how high moisture content they have and also the quality, but more importantly also when they were harvested. So we don't want to mix coffees that were harvested in January with coffees that are harvested in June, because the January coffee will be quite a few months older and can affect the quality of the June coffee once the coffee is stored for a long time. So the first coffee we're sending out is a Pacas cultivar, and this is actually harvested from the entire part of the farm. Normally he starts picking from the lower part of the farm, which is around 1,500 meters above sea level. And then at the end of the harvest, which would be like May, June, he picks from the top of the farm, which is like 1,800 meters above sea level. And the trees actually flower at the same time, but the maturation is much longer when it's higher up because it's cooler. And there's actually less sunlight because of the clouds that are kind of stopping around the mountain. So this particular season, they were actually harvesting from the top and the bottom at the same time for some reason. And this is a Pacas cultivar, as I said, picked in February last year. And it's one of the first pickings that they did, but it tastes really nice, I think. So let's taste it. Yeah. The coffees from Nacimiento is always really, really sweet and really, really clean. And I'll explain a little bit why it's that clean. It's because he's drying it on raised beds under shade, and he's actually picking out all the defect coffees by hand. Also, the wet process we have kind of perfected over here, so he's really cleaning the coffees well, not fermenting them too long, and then soaking them in clean water before the coffee is dried. The coffees are now taken down to his house because he has built a new house in the nearby town where he can dry the coffee. So because we've been buying coffee from him for many years and paid a good price, he's been able to invest in a house with dryers. He actually even has a roaster by his house. So there's been a lot of development on the farm that makes the coffee a lot better. But let's taste. These coffees from this region in general, they're very, very fruity, I think. But they're not so high acidity like you get in Kenyan coffee. So with fruity, I mean, you have a lot of taste like stone fruit, like mango. I kind of recognize it as being red berries, but I guess that's a little cultural, what you prefer to refer it to. But it's definitely very juicy and has a very fruity flavor. Acidity level is not too high, and it's very kind of smooth and rich and sweet, long finish. Maybe for this first picking, you'll pick up a slight herbal note as well, especially in the finish. But predominantly this is quite a fruity coffee. And let's say we have an intensity meter from 0 to 10. I would say the intensity is maybe on a 6 on this coffee. So first coffee, Pacas cultivar, harvested from the entire farm, but in February month. And then the second coffee is the kind of, how can you say, the parent of Pacas. It's the Bourbon cultivar from Nacimiento, and I know for a lot of you this is your favorite cultivar from Nacimiento, including myself, except he now is also producing a fantastic SL28. So like historically this was one of the first cultivars he started producing because the trees were already planted on the farm when he bought the land. And so these trees are really, really old, and they're Bourbon cultivar. And I have to say, this coffee is always very intense, very fruity. It's very complex, so you get, again, these kind of mango flavors, red berry flavors. It's a little bit more winey in the acidity, maybe a little bit more delicate in the mouthfeel. It's not as thick, but it's definitely smooth and clear and very transparent, I think. So the second coffee is a Bourbon cultivar, as I said. And the reason why Jobneel is not planting a lot more of this cultivar is not because we don't like the flavor, but the trees are actually really, really tall, so they're a little bit more difficult to pick. And also they do get a little bit more leaf rust and disease and pests. So that's why he prefers to plant more of the Pacas, because it tends to produce a little bit better. And we think the quality is, it's not the same, but it's also very, very good. So that's why we have kind of recommended him to plant more Pacas, and especially to remove the Catuai, because the Catuai coffee on his farm didn't really taste that great. So those are the kind of two basic varieties that he has. Now the third coffee that we're sending out is also a Pacas cultivar, but this is from the late harvests. So from memory, this is picked in April, May, and it's a little bit more intense than the coffee from February for sure. And that's just because the trees have had longer maturations. And normally these coffees from this part of the season is from the top of the farm, and I guess the majority of it is as well, but I just know from last year from the reports that I got that they were picking throughout the whole year or throughout the whole season on the whole farm. Let's taste. Yes, a bit more intensity. It has same flavors as the first coffee, but just more intensity. And I find it really interesting to see that early picking and late picking from this farm, they can be quite different in intensity. So I said this was intensity 6, maybe this is at intensity 8 or 9. And the Bourbon also maybe 8 or 9. The most intense coffee he has is the SL28, but unfortunately we didn't have a lot of this coffee this year because he only has a few trees of them. So we weren't able to send them out to our subscribers this year, unfortunately. I'm very sad about that. Cool, so again to repeat, first coffee, Pacas, second coffee, Bourbon, and the third coffee also Pacas, but a late harvest Pacas. So that's what you can kind of think of when you hear late harvest. It's not necessarily hanging on the tree for a long time to become overripe, but it's just there are different stages of maturation of cherries on the tree, because you will have more than one flowering on the trees, and also because you have higher altitude, cooler climates, maturation can take a lot longer in the higher climates. So this is why a lot of people think that higher altitudes will give you higher quality coffees. I have to say that that's in general quite true, but it really depends on the microclimate on each farm. And you can also mimic high altitude coffees by planting shade trees and so on. I really hope you enjoyed these coffees. These are actually one of my favorite coffees throughout the year. I really enjoy drinking them every day because they're both fruity and so sweet and smooth. And if you want to learn more about what we've done together with Jobneel on his farm, there's a lot of information on our webpage, teamwendelboe.no. And we also have some YouTube videos that we filmed a couple of years ago so that you can see a little bit from the farm actually. But thanks for watching, and I really hope you enjoy the coffees. And if you don't know what a coffee subscription is, go to our website. It means you can subscribe to our coffee, and we send you coffee once a month, and I pick the coffees. You can subscribe from 1 to 6 bags. We ship all over the world, and you can stop and pause it at any time. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.